Hey, everybody. Welcome once again to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And you are listening to us on WQEE 99.1 FM, the key out of Newton, Georgia, home of Southern Sports. This is episode 709, just in case you're keeping score at home. And I am your host, Richard Holdridge. Happy to be here. It is Monday night. This show will be rebroadcasted Tuesday on WQEE. You can catch the show Monday through Friday on WQEE from 2 to 3. I'm on right after Rod Peterson and right before Braves Country Today with Mac McGee and the Armchair Quarterbacks. On the show today, I'm going to have him on shortly. Phillip Jordan is going to be coming on the show, and we're going to recap everything that happened over the weekend in college football. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the Dothan Wolves, as well as he is the program manager and is the producer of the Scoreboard show for 96.9 The Legend down in Dothan, as they actually have a big game this upcoming Friday against Smith Station, as we're going to talk a little bit about some high school football. By the way, I want to make an announcement on this show. Myself and Thrift Behringer are going to be airing our Georgia Alabama Sports live show tomorrow on Facebook Live and on YouTube from 7 to 9. So you want to check that out. Special guest is going to be WRBL Sports Director Jack Patterson. He is going to be coming on the show as we preview Okay, sorry about that. Just experiencing some technical difficulties. Hope everybody is having a great evening. I'm going to get into this show, and Phillip Jordan is going to be joining me shortly. Let's go ahead and talk about the NFL games yesterday. I didn't get a chance on yesterday's show to talk about the NFL. I did talk about the Atlanta Falcons. They did get the 25-24 victory over the Green Bay Packers. Right now, we've got a doubleheader for Monday Night Football. I'll give you the score updates. It's in the third quarter, 9 minutes to go. The New Orleans Saints trying to go to 2-0. They are leading the Carolina Panthers 6-3. And the Cleveland Browns are leading the Pittsburgh Steelers 11-7 in Pittsburgh. But we had some amazing games. I'm going to start with the Buffalo Bills. This was a bounce back game. They had to win this game after losing to the Jets week 1. They get the 38-10 victory over the Las Vegas Raiders. Baltimore goes to 2-0 as they beat the Cincinnati Bengals 27-24. And, it got me thinking, Cincinnati is like one of the favorites to go to the Super Bowl representing the AFC, and they're 0-2. I mean, that is going to be a tough hole for Cincinnati to get out of. The Kansas City Chiefs, it wasn't the story of Patrick Mahomes. It was the defense that shut down Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars in Jacksonville. You knew the Chiefs were going to bounce back once they re-signed Chris Jones and Travis Kelce came back from that injury. I still am not a believer in the Kansas City Chiefs as far as a number one wide receiver. I am rooting for Central's Justin Ross. I would love to see him get some catches, and just looking down the list, he did not have a catch in the game. Sky Moore, who's on my fantasy team, he did have 3 catches for 70 yards. And Kadarius Toney, he didn't have a whole lot of drops, but he did have 5 receptions. The Chiefs still don't have a number one receiver. So how's that going to play out when they take on, I don't know, the Miami Dolphins, which right now looks like the best team in the AFC. They looked incredible. And that offense, Mike McDaniel, he could get coach of the year. Tua Tagovailoa, if he is healthy, he can just anchor that offense. He's got 2 incredible wide receivers, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and the former 49er running back Raheem Mostert. I can't believe he's having an incredible season. The Washington Commanders are 2-0. And I can't believe that the Denver Broncos are 0-2. That is the shocking score from yesterday. The Dallas Cowboys, you knew they were going to get the win over the New York Jets, 30-10. Zach Wilson throws 3 picks. This Cowboys defense, are they really this good, or did they beat up on bad teams? I think that the Cowboys are going to continue steamrolling through teams like the Cardinals and then the New England Patriots. And then they'll be 4-0, getting ready to play the San Francisco 49ers, who might be 4-0 for that Sunday night game on October the 6th. I'm penciling in this game. This is, to me, the game of the year. You got the 49ers and the Cowboys in week 5. This is going to be absolutely incredible. Cowboys get a big win. They are 2-0. Yes, their defense is scary. How about the New York Giants? They came back from a 21-point deficit to defeat the Arizona Cardinals to go to 1-1. The Cardinals, an inspired 0-2. Josh Dobbs had a good game to start, but the Cardinals, they're going to be tanking for Caleb Williams. I honestly believe that. I was very impressed with the Seattle Seahawks getting the road victory over the Detroit Lions. I think that Geno Smith has proven that he is not a one-hit wonder. You have the Indianapolis Colts. They did lose Anthony Richardson in the game against the Houston Texans. But Gardner Minshew, is he not the best backup quarterback in the league? Gardner Minshew comes out of nowhere and just has an incredible game. How about Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? They are 2-0 as they beat the Chicago Bears 27-17. And I'm starting to sell my stock on Justin Fields. I actually thought that this would be the franchise quarterback the Bears were looking for. I'm not sold on Justin Fields. And you look at the other scores. The Titans, they get a big victory over the Los Angeles Chargers in overtime, 27-24. And right now, I think Brandon Staley is on the hot seat. And we are getting ready to wrap up week 2, this doubleheader on Monday night. The Panthers just tied it up. It's 6-6 right now. The Cleveland Browns trying to go to 2-0, leading the Pittsburgh Steelers in the second half, 11:15 left to go. Do you like the doubleheader on Monday night? Because we're going to get that again next week. We got the Buccaneers and the Eagles, and then the Rams and the Bengals, the rematch of the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Week 3 in the NFL, it's going to be here before you know it. That Thursday night game on Prime Video, the New York Football Giants and the San Francisco 49ers. I could not be happier, especially after my 49ers got the impressive 30-23 victory over the Los Angeles Rams. And Matthew Stafford, he is back. He came back from his injury. He was able to get the ball out quick, and really the Rams threw the kitchen sink at the 49ers. The Niners did not have a good game in this contest against the Rams. They've beaten the Rams 9 straight times in the regular season, but they did lose to the Rams where it counted, the 2021 NFC Championship, and it still hurts to this day. But the 49ers, they are a 10.5-point favorite against the New York Football Giants, who are going to be without Saquon Barkley. This, to me, is a trap game because the Giants' defense with Kayvon Thibodeau and Leonard Williams, that could be the key in this game. And, right now, up to this point, Brock Purdy has not made the big mistake. I mean, he hasn't had a perfect game. I mean, he had some throws that were overthrows in the Rams game, but Brock Purdy has been efficient enough. I want to see what Brock Purdy looks like without Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is really the key for the 49ers, and he really ignites that offense with his rushing ability and his receiving from the backfield and lining up as a wide receiver. And they really haven't utilized George Kittle that much. College football. Oh, I tell you, I know that a lot of people just decided to take the week off because there wasn't any big, intriguing ranked opponents. In fact, I would not be shocked if people got married during this past weekend. I know that's a big no-no from Josh Pate. He says that he's recommending that people get married in the summer. I got married in July, so I did my due diligence. No, but if you're going to get married, this would be the weekend to do it because there wasn't a lot of ranked games, and the only game that I really wanted to watch from start to finish was Tennessee, Florida. I knew Florida was going to shellac Tennessee. They always do, especially in the swamp. But that Georgia South Carolina game did get me nervous as South Carolina was up 14-3. I didn't get a chance to talk about Colorado State. What Colorado is doing in college football, really making this a national story. Coach Prime, yes, Travis Hunter is going to be out for a couple of weeks. The viewership is absolutely fascinating. This was Colorado State, but yet Colorado came back and they win the game in overtime 43-35. This was absolutely incredible. And I was just looking at the box score. Colorado State was up 28-17. It was just a back and forth game. I could not believe how many people were watching this game. So, as I look at week 4 in college football, really the matchup that I really want to see is Notre Dame and Ohio State. That is the big game, but also you have some other games, including Oregon and Colorado. It's kind of lost a little bit of its lackluster because Travis Hunter is not going to be playing in the game. UCLA and Utah is really intriguing. Ole Miss and Alabama. A lot of ranked opponents. Oregon State, Washington State. You got Iowa taking on Penn State. And, you have Florida State and Clemson. Normally, this would be a very great matchup, but Clemson is unranked. But that would also be a pretty good matchup. A Rutgers team that's undefeated, Greg Schiano, going to the Big House, taking on Michigan. Jim Harbaugh will be back from his suspension. He was suspended for 3 games. You have Duke and UConn, which would be a great basketball matchup. But Duke ranked 18th, and they are 3-0. I'm looking at Texas taking on Baylor. Is there anybody on upset alert? You have North Carolina taking on Pitt, USC taking on Arizona State. I don't think so. I don't think there's anybody that is going to be on upset alert for week 4. I think that all the favorites are going to win. And we shall see. I'm looking to see how the teams will respond in week 4. But hey, let's talk about some high school football matchups for week 6. And we have Whitewater 2-2 after losing to Troup County. They are going to be at Callaway Stadium taking on the LaGrange Grangers, who are 2-2. They lost their first region game of the year to Stars Mill 21-7. Central Macon, who have not won a game this year, is taking on the Kendrick Cherokees. So the 0-4 Central Macon taking on the Kendrick Cherokees at Otis Spencer Stadium. You have Westover taking on Northside. These are Thursday night games. Westover's 3-2, taking on the Northside Patriots, who are also 3-2. Notasulga taking on Lochapoka. Notasulga is 1-3, taking on the Lochapoka Indians, who are 4-0. This is a big rivalry game. If you are familiar with that area just outside of Auburn. Friday, we do have some intriguing matchups, including Gatewood, who's undefeated, taking on the Pacelli Vikings, who winners of 4 straight. They are 4-1 on the season. At Otis Spencer Stadium, you have the 5A school from Forsyth, Georgia, Mary Persons, taking on the Columbus Blue Devils. And then at Kinnett Stadium, you have the Jordan Red Jackets looking for their first victory of the season, taking on the Shaw Raiders, who were able to get a bounce-back win last week against the Columbus Blue Devils. Spencer is on the road in Macon, taking on Rutland. You have Brookstone on the road in Macon, taking on Stratford Academy. Brookstone did pick up their first victory of the season, beating Mount Zion last week. And you have the Callaway Cavaliers, fresh off their bye. They are going to be on the road taking on Redan. You have the Calvary Christian Knights that are going to be in Noonan, Georgia, 3-2 on the season, taking on the Heritage Hawks, who got their first victory last week against Cross Keys. Stars Mill is going to be at Callaway Stadium, taking on the Troup County Tigers. Troup County just, wow, what can you say? 59-7 over Whitewater. Troup County is 4-1, and they are looking incredible. The Jaguars from JAG, formerly known as Jefferson Davis, are going to be at Garrett Harrison Stadium taking on the Central Red Devils. Hardaway Hawks 0-5, playing a gauntlet of a schedule in the GHSA, traveling to Fort Valley to take on Peach County, who's also winless. They are 0-4 on the season, so something's got to give. Russell County, after suffering two heartbreaking losses, is taking on Auburn. Auburn, who got the win over JAG last week. The Prattville Lions are taking on Opelika. Opelika 2-2 on the year after losing a Central last week. Smith Station, they have not won a game yet, as they are down in Dothan, Alabama, to take on the 3-1 Dothan Wolves. And Eufaula, the Eufaula Tigers, they are on the road taking on Pike Road. So let's go ahead and Charles Henderson taking on Beauregard. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and look at some other scores. Charles Henderson taking on Beauregard. Chetco is taking on Manchester. You got Macon County, undefeated Macon County out of Montezuma, taking on the Schley County Wildcats, who are also undefeated. Central Talbotton is taking on the surprise of the Chattahoochee Valley. Taylor County is 3-1. Reeltown, undefeated at 3-0, taking on Barber County, who is 1-3. Lynette is on the road taking on Laverne. Bessemer Academy is taking on the 4-1 Chambers Academy. Remember, Chambers, their only loss was a 14-7 loss to Lee Scott Academy on opening day. Macon East has yet to win a game in the AISA, is taking on Lee Scott, who has lost their first game of the season to Glenwood last week. Now let's go over to some of the teams in Noonan, as East Coweta, 5-0 on the season. They are taking on Lambert, who is also undefeated at 4-0. We have Jackson taking on Sandy Creek, who is 4-1. Northgate is 3-2, taking on Veterans. And finally, Flint River. This is a border war. Flint River Academy 4-0. The Wildcats taking on Lakeside School out of Eufaula, who is 4-1. I cannot wait till high school football for week 6. I can't believe that the high school football season is at the halfway point. We start getting some clarity with these teams and making the playoffs, and it should be a lot of fun. Myself and Thrift Behringer will be on the call on Georgia Alabama Sports Live on Thursday. We are going to be calling Westover and Northside at Kinnett Stadium. And then we have a special treat because on Friday, we are going to be at Pacelli for high school game day. And this is going to be the first time that I've been at Pacelli for a football game. So I'm really excited about that. But without further ado, please welcome to the show. He's been a friend of the show, a special guest. It is the one, the only Phillip Jordan of the Phillip Jordan Show, and he covers everything down in Dothan, Alabama. Phillip, what's going on?
Not much, Richard. Glad to be here on a Monday night. with you. I have across from me, you got two TVs going. I got both Monday Night Football games going. Anyways, I'm glad to be here as always. Glad to join you.
Yeah, that's how you do it. You just got to get all the TVs you can. I know you've had a busy week. Let's go ahead and start with the high school team that you're very familiar with down in Dothan, Alabama. It's the Dothan Wolves. They're 3-1, got a big win over Prattville. They are hosting Smith Station, who is winless. Smith Station just completely got humiliated by Enterprise. I expect Dothan to go 4-1. Are we looking at another playoff run for the Dothan Wolves? It seems like, they went to the second round of the playoffs last year, lost to Auburn. I mean, they lose to Auburn by 1 point. They're 1 point away from being undefeated.
Yeah, that was a heartbreaking loss for Dothan. Because in previous seasons since Dothan the consolidation, if anybody doesn't know, a few years ago, Dothan and Northview two high schools merged to become the new Dothan High to come to Dothan Wolves. And since they joined in 7A, it's been a struggle against Auburn. This was the first time they toe to toe with them, 28. Kenny decided to go there at the end and second or trying to try to win it. They weren't able to do that. But, and Coach Kennedy will tell you, and he told us that on the coaches show, and he said it in the local paper here in Dothan, that no moral victories. But it showed that this Dothan Wolves football team is a lot better than what they have been. They're heading in the right direction. So they beat Prattville, and they beat Prattville. Prattville's a normally pretty good team. You know this,
Oh, yeah.
Richard. 59-24. And actually, at one point in the third quarter, it was 22-12, Dothan. And then Dothan just pulled away with some explosive plays. Prattville had some too as well. And then, of course, you talk about Smith Station, of course, having a bad year. Their head coach, Bryant Garrison, was down here in the Dothan area last year as the head coach at Slocum. But now he's up there at Smith Station. So, homecoming week 2 for Dothan. So, it'll be an interesting week there. Coach Kennedy always tells us on the coaches show every year. He said, if you want to make homecoming a good week, win the homecoming game. So that's one of the messages to the players. But anyways, Smith Station is coming up. Then a non-region game, they'll go to Baker. Dothan, after this week, has 4 straight away games. They will not be back at home at Riphew Stadium until the last week when they play Jack High School, formerly known as Jeff Davis. So you got matchups at Baker, who has a highly touted quarterback. You got to go to Central Phoenix City, who looks like the class of 7A Region 2.
Oh, they are.
Yeah. And then you've got Opelika, who's a good team. And they have the rival matchup with Enterprise. I may have the Opelika and Enterprise flip. And there's a bye week mixed in there, too. So big games. You look at it. Obviously, you got to have this one at Smith Station. Don't need last year, Dothan went up to Smith Station and they got a big lead early, but then Smith Station came back. I think their quarterback had to throw over 50 times. I don't know, Richard, you're more familiar with that than I am, but it just seems like there's something. Smith Station has had some struggles in the win-loss column, but when you go there, there's some difficulties involved. They can be tough, but so I see the Central Phoenix City game will be another litmus test. Okay, you played well against Auburn. How well will you do against Central Phoenix City? Of course, you're going to their place. But I believe, if you beat Enterprise, big rivalry game, beat Opelika again, I mean, that's a long way of saying, Richard. I do think this is a playoff team. I think Dothan, I'm going to say this right now. I think Dothan, at worst, is the third best team in the region. But I think they can even get better because who knows what's going to happen. They played Central tough last year. I mean, that was a tough game, too, last year. They played them really well last year. So we'll see what happens when they go there in a few weeks.
We shall see. And you cover high school sports in the Wiregrass area. So schools like Eufaula, Charles Henderson, Enterprise. Our paths cross every now and then. I cover high school football in the Chattahoochee Valley. You're covering the area just a little bit down, just outside the Chattahoochee Valley. You heard about Barber County winning their first game in 10 years. I mean,
that was awesome. I was so happy for them kids.
I was too.
10 years, man. That's a long time. So can we have story time on your show?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
I had an embarrassing moment a few years ago on the school board show. For anybody who doesn't know, which would be, if you get a chance, after you get to listen to what Richard's doing, wherever game is at, flip over 969 to Legend. After the game, I do a school board show. So I don't know, Rich, are you familiar with the Score Stream app?
Yes.
Don't always trust it. I now go ScoreStream and Max Preps. I check more than one source now. So a few years ago, ScoreStream had Barber County winning a football game. I forget who it was. So I was so excited. I get on the scoreboard show and I announced, I said, Barber County has snapped their 7 or 8 year losing streak, because like I said, it was a few years ago. Then I get the next morning, look at the paper and said Barber County lost. So whoever had
Oh,
submitted that score into ScoreStream was wrong. And I felt so embarrassed. And here's the bad thing. I was thinking, okay. I did apologize on the podcast. I did a Wiregrass High School football report. But then I didn't have that opportunity the next week on the radio to apologize because Dothan was on their off week. So it was about 2 weeks. So I felt bad, but I was so happy for them. And it's kind of funny how it happened because Calhoun snapped their streak last year against Barber County because they had a long streak, almost 10 years, I believe. So now Barber County turns around and does it to them. So I was happy for them. I was really happy for see Barber County get that great basketball program, by the way. Always great basketball program, but great to see that with the football team.
absolutely. I was happy for the Barber County Jaguars. And down in Eufaula, you got the Eufaula Tigers in 5A. Charles Henderson, they're taking on Beauregard. Charles Henderson went to the state title game, lost to Ramsey in 5A. There's just so much to talk about. We're getting ready for week 6 in high school football. Phillip, I cannot believe that high school football is at the halfway point.
I know. Actually, before I got on here with you, probably about 30 minutes to 45 minutes ago, I finished up this week's Wiregrass High School football report. And I mentioned that when I was going over the scores from last week. I said, wow, I know with you, with the Georgia stuff, you're a little bit kind of ahead a week on how many weeks you've done it. You've done it probably a week more than I have
Yes.
for us. But anyways, yeah, it flies by. You can't wait for it to get here. But then all of a sudden you look up and, man, it's week 10 and the playoffs are starting. So it flies by, but you got to enjoy it. It's a fun ride during the season.
All right, Phillip, let's switch gears. Let's talk about college football. Instant reaction to this past weekend. All the talk is that Alabama does not have a quarterback. I would hold up just for a second. I think they just need to reinsert Jalen Milroe in the starting lineup, and they should be fine. I know that Ole Miss is licking their chops. Lane Kiffin has got the playbook ready. He thinks that he could possibly get Alabama, and I know that here's a hot sports take, and I think that Alabama does not look like Alabama, especially in that game against South Florida. Is it possible that we're looking at maybe a 7-5, 8-4 Alabama? I know that Alabama fans are just going to crucify me, but I just don't. I don't see the dominance that Alabama has been for an entire decade.
Well, I believe Jalen Milroe should be the quarterback.
Absolutely.
First off, because he gives them the best opportunity to win. Because Alabama's biggest weakness to me right now, and going into the season, actually, it wasn't quarterback. To me, it was receiver. It's not as much that anymore. I think the biggest problem Alabama has is pass protection with the offensive line. I think the run blocking is fine. They ran for over 200 yards against South Florida. I mean, they had a solid game on the ground. Buckner's not the guy. We saw that Saturday against South Florida. Ty Simpson is not ready. He made some nice throws, but he's just not ready yet to be the guy. Jalen Milroe, at least if you have a suspect offensive line when it comes to pass protection, he can get away from it. And everybody, not everybody, but there was a big chunk of Alabama fans that put the Texas loss on him. Yes, he threw 2 bad interceptions that did cost him, but that was a team loss. There wasn't one person you could point out. Because let's be honest, Richard, if Ty Simpson or Tyler Buckner had started that game, they get sacked a whole lot more times than Jalen Milroe. And Milroe made a great throw, that touchdown pass to Burton in the back of the end zone to give them the lead. I mean, Texas just played a great game, and Alabama's defensive line didn't touch the quarterback Ewers in that game. So they have more issues in quarterback. But Jalen Milroe should be the guy. But I'm going to say this, and I was talking to somebody about this earlier today. We have seen this before. Alabama may not be looking as good. Everybody's wondering, is it over? Is it over? They're going into a game. They have an upstart, a team that's got a lot of momentum in Ole Miss. Everybody's going to say this week what you just said. Is it over? Is Alabama heading in the wrong direction? And then Alabama reminds us who they are. I'm going to call it. I think Alabama is going to beat Ole Miss by more than 2 touchdowns on Saturday. Because also, you know what I've seen out of Ole Miss against Tulane? A team that got pushed around.
Interesting.
They got pushed around by Tulane. I know the score. You just look at the scores of the Ole Miss game to win by double digits. Jackson Dart's throwing for a lot of yards, but I don't see that toughness out of Ole Miss. And Alabama, say what you want about the offense, the defense is going to bring it. And they have here. Nick Saban is going to say this or that, block out the noise. I'm going to use a Nick Saban phrase. They're going to hear that rat poison. They're going to see that rat poison. And I think Alabama. I don't think Alabama's a national championship team this year. I will say that. But I don't think they're a 75 team either. I think we're going to get reminded this Saturday who Alabama is and who Nick Saban is as a head coach.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Their defense is playing lights out. I think that their defense can step up and they can start getting some momentum. Even with that, even if they beat Ole Miss, they still have a tough schedule, having to play at Texas A&M. They got to play Auburn at Auburn.
That's
LSU,
always weird.
It's a weird game. Even when Alabama's great, look at all the times that Alabama has faced Auburn in the Plains since the kick six. It's been a competitive game, whether either Auburn has won or Bama has played it close. I think the last time that Alabama played Auburn, that it was that overtime game, the crazy catch by Ja'Cory Brooks. Auburn had a down year that year, and that I want to say that was Brian Harson's first year, I believe so.
That's the infamous game where if Tank Bigsby does not run out of bounds, Alabama doesn't get the ball back. Auburn runs out the clock and they beat Alabama. And then Alabama doesn't – I don't think Alabama goes to the SEC championship game because remember the next week they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game to get to the playoff. So that was that one. So, even when Auburn hasn't won these games, they've been close. You talk about 2013, we know the kick six. And then 2015 was kind of a tight game a little bit. 2017, Auburn beat them 26-14. 2019, the 2 interceptions by Mac Jones. Then we talked about 2021 with Tank Bigsby. So, Alabama. When Alabama plays Auburn in Tuscaloosa, it's usually a blowout.
It's a different story.
But when they go to Jordan-Hare, it's a different deal. You talk about their schedule. Maybe Tennessee doesn't look so daunting coming into Tuscaloosa now after the way they got beat by Florida.
Oh, they got embarrassed by Florida.
They did, especially on the ground. Joe Milton's got the can of an arm, but he's inconsistent with his accuracy. And I think that's going to be a problem with Tennessee this year. But LSU looked pretty good against Mississippi State. I think Florida State right now has the best win of the season by beating LSU. We'll see this Saturday when they play Clemson. But the LSU game is the big one with there. Now, you brought up Ole Miss, and I'll close. I'll say my last thing on this question on this. If Ole Miss is going to win the West, this is the year. Well, because one, there's no West after this year. I mean, really, how hard is it going to be for Ole Miss to get to the SEC championship game when there's no divisions? This is their opportunity. You've got a weakened or not a lesser Alabama team this year. I don't know where the LSU game is at between them and Ole Miss. You got to beat LSU, but this may be their opportunity.
I absolutely agree with you, Phillip. And by the way, I am looking at the schedule, and I see it's in Oxford. They play on September the 30th. That's going to be an exciting game. Let's go ahead and talk about the Auburn Tigers. They are 3-0, but they haven't really played anybody. UMass, Samford at home. They went all the way across the country to take on Cal, and they're 3-0. Peyton Thorne, he's run the ball pretty well. He's thrown some picks, but Auburn, a win is a win, and Hugh Freeze has got them in the right direction. But they have got a tough test this weekend, taking on Texas A&M in College Station, and Carter Wegman. I mean, he could be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. I know that Peyton Thorne is going to have to cut down on the mistakes, but can Auburn win this game on the road?
Auburn has been, since A&M has joined the SEC, Auburn has been very successful at College Station. They've won more than they've lost. And we saw a few weeks ago when A&M played Miami, they got shredded. And okay, here's one thing I have had my criticism so far of Hugh Freeze has been, and they didn't do it against Samford, and I think it was by design. I'm okay with Robbie Ashford getting in the game. He's a great athlete. You should get him in the game. but they were being a little bit too often with the switching out of quarterbacks. And here's my issue with that. If Peyton Thorne was somebody you've had on your roster, on a coaching staff that had also been there for 2 to 3 years, he's comfortable with his receivers and his coaches. People didn't remember Peyton Thorne was not there in the springtime. And Auburn's got new receivers too, and this is new coaching staff. Peyton Thorne needs to get acclimated with his receivers and with the offense. Well, the best way to do that is playing in games. I mean, you talk about practice all you want. Playing in games, you'll get better there in real game situations. Well, he can't do that. He can't get in a rhythm if he's constantly had to think about it. He's looking over his shoulder. Not that he's getting benched, but okay, they're going to pull me out. And then there was once or twice against Cal, they had Robbie Ashford on first and second down, and then they have a third and long. Okay, Peyton Thorne, go out there and throw a first down. I mean, that's not fair to him. But Saturday against Sanford, it was pretty much predominantly Peyton Thorne until the second half when they knew it was over. Robbie Ashford took over. Peyton Thorne threw for about 282 yards, and he ran for over 100. I believe had he gotten to 18 more passing yards, he would have been the first Auburn quarterback to ever throw for 300 and run for 100 in a game. People say at Sanford, I don't care who you play. That's impressive. So I liked what I saw him, but the mistakes is the biggest thing. He forced the ball twice in that game. Early on, first possession, they got the ball down to the 1 yard line. He rolled out, third down. Why you didn't run the ball with Jarquez Hunter in this place, I don't know, but that's a different discussion. Instead of just kind of eating it or just throwing the ball away, he forced it into traffic, interception. And then another interception they got midfield. He just took a shot down the field, double team. The thing about it, though, was, Richard, he had a receiver going over the middle for 10 yards. He just hit the receiver, first down, move the chains. So if he just stays patient, I think he can do well. I like what the defense has played well. I know that, you said, the schedule's been light, but the defense has played well. But here's the thing. With this game, Auburn has no pressure. First year, all the pressure's on Jimbo Fisher and Bob Petrino.
Yes.
Because what is going to be talked about even more if Auburn goes in there and wins? They're 2-2. I've struggled with it. I think A&M wins the game. I think it's close. I wouldn't be shocked if Auburn comes out with a victory, though.
And let's go ahead and segue to Georgia. This is the opponent that Auburn plays in 2 weeks. Georgia, man, I tell you, I watched this game, that first half. South Carolina down 14-3. They couldn't get a pass rush on Spencer Rattler. He looked amazing. They had some great wideout. I think that Juice actually getting out of the game for South Carolina, that was a huge injury. But Luke Doty had a big reception. And then all the talk from Georgia fans after the first half, down 14-3, was bench Carson Beck, fire Mike Bobo. I didn't panic yet, Phillip. Georgia had the ball to start the second half. I knew if Georgia just got into a rhythm and if they got a stop, that they were going to come back and win this game. But do you think that Georgia fans panicked a little bit too early in the first half, down 14-3 to an inferior South Carolina team?
I will complete, honesty here. I haven't watched much of Georgia the first 2 weeks because of who they were playing. You look on paper who they are, you said, okay, Georgia should blow them out. Did watch the South Carolina game, though. Obviously, I watched that one. I had like I said, the double TV thing. I had Alabama, South Florida game on one, that game on the other. But I have seen on Twitter and social media, Georgia fans have not been happy the first 3 weeks of the season. Georgia has not run the ball to their liking. And just look, you're not looking at the president of the Mike Bobo fan club sitting over here either. I've not been a big fan of his as an offensive coordinator from his first stint with Georgia. Auburn, all his other spots. I've just not been a big fan of his. But I think Carson Beck's fine. I mean, you got to give him time to grow. Because we need to remember, everybody looks at Stetson Bennett the last 2 years. Well, let's remember 2020. He had some ups and downs. He didn't play well, I think, against Florida, against Alabama. The games they lost, he did not play well. But he had time to grow. And you got to have time to grow. And look, I think a lot of Georgia fans are kind of like jumping, a little bit too much on this. But I will say this, South Carolina came and played well that first half. I saw Georgia missing tackles. That's something you do not see out of the Georgia defense.
No.
Now, I believe Kirby Smart read them the riot act at halftime and got his message across, because we saw a completely different team there in the second half. But I do worry about this with Georgia Richard complacency, because you've won back-to-back national championships, and let's be honest, the schedule's not daunting, especially now. You kind of thought, okay, maybe Tennessee could give them a game. They do go to Knoxville, but after what we saw this past Saturday at Tennessee, maybe not. I'm going to throw one out there. You know who I wonder is now going to be their toughest matchup in the East? Missouri.
Missouri
just beat Kansas State, and who was the closest team in the regular season to beating Georgia last year?
Missouri.
Now that was in Missouri. Now they'll have to go to Athens this year. That was an impressive win.
Missouri has beaten Georgia in Athens, by the way. I want to say it was 2013. It was the year that Missouri just forced a bunch of turnovers. They had a scoop and score, and Georgia could not overcome. But I can't remember the year. Yeah, so Missouri, that was the year that Missouri went to the SEC championship. So it had to have been 2010, because I think it was the year they played Auburn in the SEC championship. No, it was 2013.
It was 2013. Their first 2013. 2012. They went in 13 and 14. Yeah,
that's right. That is right. Yeah, because South Carolina played Auburn in the SEC championship in 2010.
Yeah, that was a complete blowout by the Tigers. I remember Cam Newton throwing a Hail Mary at halftime to kind of carry the momentum in on that one. But yeah, you mentioned Florida. Here's why I don't say Florida. I know they played well Saturday, and that was a lot of the run game. I don't trust Graham Mertz. I don't know how many. I know it's Florida now. He's not at Wisconsin, but I don't know how many times I flipped over to a Big Ten game with Wisconsin. Close game. He falls apart in the fourth quarter. I feel like he'll fall apart against Georgia. That's just my feeling. I think that game with Florida and Tennessee Saturday night said more about Tennessee than it actually did Florida. It's a good win. It's a very good win for Billy Napier. I had that team going 5-7 going into year, maybe 7-5 now. I still think they got some big issues. I don't think they have it outside of Ricky Pearsall. They don't have a receiver that they can rely on. But Florida, I just don't. I don't see them competing with Georgia. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Graham Mertz just turned a corner, and I'm just not willing to see it.
And finally, Phillip, probably the biggest national story in college football. I don't know where this phenomenon is coming. Maybe it's the Deion effect, but the national spotlight, the viewership, the ratings. College game day was at Boulder. You had Colorado State, Colorado. People were watching this game 10 o'clock at night. Colorado has just been this national phenomenon, and it's all because of Deion.
You had to ask me about Colorado.
Yeah, I know.
Are you ready for your show to trend worldwide?
Yeah, let's do this.
I am sick of the Colorado hype. I'm going to say something I never thought I would say on my show or anybody's show. I agree with Danny Cannell. They have not played anybody. They beat a TCU team that's rebuilding. That is not the same team that went to the national championship game last year. A bad Nebraska team and a bad Colorado State team that you were favored by 24 points to beat. You had to go to double overtime.
Yeah.
Now this week, you had an excuse because of what head coach Jay Norvell had said during the week. I probably shouldn't have said that. Every week I'm seeing stuff. This team disrespect us. Not everybody's disrespecting you. If you have to make that up, fine. But they're treating Colorado like they're Alabama, like they're Ohio State, like they're Georgia. They have not earned that. Deion's great. I think Deion's going to do a great job there. And it sounds like I'm just railing on them. He's done a great job going 3-0. Most people thought that was all they were going to win this year. But for me as a fan, they haven't played anybody. And people are acting like they just beat 3 of the greatest teams in college football. They haven't.
I
You know,
agree, and it's going to get tougher now that Travis Hunter is going to be out for the next 3
well, it's going to
games.
get tougher because who they're playing next. They're stepping up in weight class. They got to
Oregon,
get,
USC, and Arizona State. Yeah, that's 3 losses right there, especially without Travis Hunter.
and then you got Washington State. That's no one to scoff at. And Utah's later in the year, and who knows if Cam Rising is back by that time. I mean, and everybody knows how much I appreciate Utah. I'm a fan of them. I like watching Utah play. So, and I know I sound very negative toward Deion in Colorado. Again, I just want to say that I appreciate what they've done. He's done a really good job. They're a brand now. I give them credit for that. I guess more my problem, Richard, is with the national media on it, treating them like they've done. But ratings are ratings. But it bothers me a little bit, all the attention that they're getting for beating nobody.
Oh, I agree, but you can't control ratings. It's just this is what people who don't. It's like the Tiger Woods effect in golf. Remember the average sports fan would watch golf because of Tiger Woods. I think the average sports fan is watching college football because of Deion.
Well, it's LeBron James in the NBA.
There you go.
I will admit this. I've been a lifelong Lakers fan, date back to Kobe and Shaq. So this is I say that let everybody know I am a Laker fan about to say what I'm about to say. I had this issue with LeBron when he came into the league. He was anointed the king before he ever played an NBA game. And that bothered me. I think maybe for the longest time, that's why I really wasn't a big fan of his. With some of the stuff with him, I'm still not a big fan of. But he's earned the right now to be called the king. He's the best player, the second greatest basketball player, perhaps all time. Not number one.
I agree.
Jordan stays there always. But over time, let's see. Does Deion prove wrong? And here's another thing. Is Deion really wanting to prop up Colorado? Or is he just going to use Colorado like he used Jackson State just to get a bigger job? That's my question.
That is a very good point. I mean, especially if there's a high-profile job that could come up. I can't really think of anybody that would be on the.
You mentioned this team that they're playing Auburn this weekend, Texas A&M. Deion has a history in Texas. Now, Sark is pretty. If they keep doing what they're doing, he's good at Texas. We know that. And Deion has expressed no interest in the NFL. What's the next biggest job in Texas? Texas A&M. If things go south with Jimbo, who's not to say they're not going to call Deion? And then you're going into Texas with Texas money. And then let's just be honest. As good as he is in the transfer portal and recruiting, you put Deion in Texas, it's a different ball game.
Well, Phillip, I'm going to say this because it really needs to be said, and I've heard it on social media. Jimbo Fisher is an 8-4 coach without Jameis Winston.
Oh, that has been my battle cry with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
For so long. You take Jameis away from him. The only year he had that was not 8 was 2020. They lost to one game to Alabama, and then they did get in the playoff because they got blown out by Alabama, who did win the national championship that year. Outside of that, yeah, I mean, he's no different than Kevin Sumlin.
Kevin Sumlin has a better record than Jimbo Fisher.
The only difference is Jimbo Fisher is making more money, and his buyout does make it almost impossible to get rid of him.
Exactly. They just threw boatloads of money to Jimbo Fisher because Texas A&M wanted to try to compete. And I bring it back to the Johnny Manziel effect because Texas A&M, when they were in the Big 12, were about an 8-4, 7-5 team. Johnny Manziel gets there, and they're in the SEC, and then and I did watch the Netflix documentary, so I knew how huge Johnny Manziel was in Texas A&M, and that really just elevated the expectations at A&M to compete with Alabama every year. Anyway, Phillip, let's go ahead and before we close this show, let's briefly talk about the NFL. I know when we were getting to prepare for the show, you did watch some games. You did watch the Falcons. The Falcons are 2-0. There's still some concerns. As a person who watches the Falcons every Sunday, I love Bijan Robinson. I think that he could end up being one of the best running backs in the NFL. And I think that the Falcons' identity is just to run the football with Bijan Robinson because Desmond Ridder is not quite ready to lead the Falcons to a victory by himself if a team stops the run. But the Falcons are 2-0, first time since 2017. You're in Alabama, so you hear a little bit about the Falcons as far as, I mean, are there NFL fans in Alabama? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, okay. First off, Richard, let's see how well you know me. Who's my favorite NFL team?
Oh boy. Yeah, I've had you on the show at least 5 times, and we haven't really talked about NFL. The Jaguars?
It's not a Southern team.
Oh, it's the Steelers.
Nope.
You're going to have me guessing, aren't you?
It's the Green Bay Packers.
That's right. I did forget about that. So you were watching this game because you're a Packers fan.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? And people ask me about the game. They said, Phillip, were you upset or bothered that the Packers lost? And actually, I said, I've actually looked at it as a positive because I keep telling my friends that, everybody looks at, Aaron Rodgers is not the only veteran that is gone from Green Bay. I mean, David Bakhtiari is really the only veteran they got. He didn't play Sunday because of an injury. They're a young team. I mean, this is a young team, and yeah, they blew a 12-point lead, but it's also a thing that they can grow from. And your first 2 games were on the road at Chicago and then at Atlanta. You go 1-1 in NFL. I think that's a win when you play back-to-back road games. If you go 1-1, that's good. They go home. They'll play the Saints. I've seen positive things at Jordan. Look, they didn't have Aaron Jones or Christian Watson Sunday. I mean, that's Christian Watson is their best receiver, and then Aaron Jones is probably I'm going to phrase he's not their best offensive player, but he's probably their most important offensive player. So, yeah, I mean they're fine. And with Atlanta, that's a big win, 2-0. They have an identity, and they're going to run the ball. And Bijan Robinson is a super talent. I thought Desmond Ridder though played really well on Sunday in the clutch. He made some throws.
He did have a 3rd and 15 that he got to Drake London. I finally saw Desmond Ridder when it was a 3rd and 15 situation. He stepped up and he threw the ball to Drake London. He's thrown it to Kyle Pitts, especially in that first game against Carolina. I just think the Falcons, this is the year. They've got to make the playoffs this year. Otherwise, Arthur Smith, he's going to be on the hot seat. I think the Falcons fans are getting impatient. Back-to-back 7-10 seasons. Arthur Blank is getting impatient. The Falcons want to get back to their Super Bowl years. And, back in 2016, 2017, I mean, these were the days, of Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. Well, let's just say this. For an entire decade, the Falcons were relevant. They were making the playoffs. They went to the NFC Championship in 2013. They had a 13-win season in 2010. I remember just following this Falcons team back when Matt Ryan was drafted in 2008, and the Falcons were relevant for an entire decade.
Yeah, they made the playoffs his rookie year. I'll tell you what, too, that was some gutsy calls by Arthur Smith at the end to go for it instead of kicking the field goal right then to get it closer and to run out the clock. I mean, look, you're talking about hot seat. If that doesn't work for you, if Green Bay stops you, whew, I can't imagine what it would have been like the next day on Atlanta radio, especially up there, them guys over at 680 The Fan. I'm sure they would have been all over Arthur Smith there. But you sent me some topics, and you talked about surprising 2-0 teams. That's not my surprising 2-0 team.
That is?
That's not.
It's not? Is it
it's
the
Tampa
Commanders?
Bay. It's Tampa Bay.
Yes. Tampa Bay. How is Baker Mayfield doing it in Tampa? This was supposed to be the down year. Tampa lost Tom Brady. I seriously thought Tampa Bay was going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. Boy, did I whiff on that.
I'll be honest with you, I thought they were going to be the worst team in that division. I had the Saints winning it because Derek Carr and I like the talent. I actually had Carolina second because I like the pieces around Bryce. I mean, I know that's going to be a bit, him getting better each week in his rookie year. Then I had Atlanta in third, and then I had Tampa Bay last. Look, it could still work out that way. We've seen 2-0 teams fall apart. I don't know if you remember the year with the Buffalo Bills with Fitzpatrick. They had like a 6-2 start, and then they just fell apart at the second half of the year. But yeah, Baker, give him credit. Mike Evans, he's balling out. They're playing well. It's funny. They're playing better this year than they were last year with Tom Brady. So,
Phillip, it is always great having you on the show. It's just fun talking about college football, high school football, the NFL. I mean, it's football season. It's finally here. And I know that you have a lot of knowledge of football. Before I let you get out of here, just tell all my listeners where they could find you on social media and how they're able to listen to your show.
all right, you can follow me on social media. Just look it up. P. Jordan, SEC. Would love to talk to you. So just hit me up over there. Phillip Jordan Show is on all your favorite podcast platforms. And check out another one I'm doing if it's okay. I'll plug it here. Wiregrass Daily News Sports. It's a podcast I do for the radio station. I help out doing Dothan Woods football. You can check out all kind of cool stuff on there. We talk Alabama, Auburn, and Troy every Wednesday on there. You can check out the Jed Kennedy Coaches Show on that feed every Thursday night, and the Wiregrass High School Football Report on Monday. So some cool stuff over there as well. Oh, yeah. And, of course, all my written work over at Last Word on College Football, where I covered Auburn Tigers.
All right. It's Phillip Jordan. Thank you so much for being a guest here on the show. And would love to get you back on soon.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, that's it. That is our show. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in once again. I hope everybody has a great rest of your night, and we are out of here. Night, everybody.